Music.
Reviews.
Chat.
Poems.
Comedy.
Writing. Interviews.
ELFM, it's radio, but so much more.
Hello and welcome to Vandal Factory. My name's Henry.
And my name's Natalie.
And
together we are
Vandal Factory.
And this is our first ever ELFM Vandal Factory radio show. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. Hey, Henry Raby, what's your vibe?
So what's my vibe? Natalie Quatermass. I am a playwright. I'm a poet. I'm a punk poet, which means I put patches on my jeans.
Shake fist at the sky.
Oh, I hate you, Sky. You're just so annoying. Make angry, ranty political poetry and political theatre as part of our theatre company, Vandal Factory. And we have emerged from the COVID restrictions, lockdowns, and we've gone, why don't we add an extra wing to our theatre company and be...
Go on.
And do a radio show. That was
Yeah. Lovely. But I was going to ask, like, some people listening might recognise your dulcet tones. They might go, hang on a minute, that weaselly, beardy boy that I've seen sitting around Chapel FM sounds a bit familiar. So just to clarify, Henry, are you... What's your role within Chapel FM?
I'm a sort of big deal, to be honest. I'm a sort of like... I'm actually sort of, I've got a lot of sway here. That's why,
That's why I got you the job.
Yeah, just to get that in.
Yeah.
I am the broadcasting worker here at Chapel FM, but in this capacity, although I am in charge of ELFM, in this capacity, I am now removing the lanyard of oppression. I need to take my headphones off to do so.
Okay.
They're going off. The lanyard's going off. There it is. It's been removed.
Wonderful.
So,
whoa, you look totally different now.
Now I'm cool and outside the system, and everything I say is my own personal view. So our funders can't be like, what? He said to smash the system, but we quite like the system.
But we love capitalism.
We are well into capitalism, mate. But enough about Henry Raby for now. Natalie, what's your vibe? What are you on about?
I thought you'd never ask. Well, I live in this here Seacroft, just down the road from Chapel FM, and I moved here right at the beginning of the first lockdown, and you couldn't stay away from me, could you? So we just wangled it so that you would get a job down the road. I'm a theatre maker, and I'm also doing a PhD, a practice-based research degree at York St John's University in climate justice and theatre and arts. So I've been the theatre director for Vandal Factory, where we've made political theatre together, as Henry said, as well as working with lots of community groups and young people, and that's my vibe. I also do lots of shaking my fist at the clouds.
Yeah, we just look like clowns covering up our sun. So that's how we've got here, but how are we feeling now we're here? We're going to open every show by asking, how's your hope and how's your anger? Or how's your hope or anger? But we'll work it out.
We'll work it out. I think really this came from this show is going to be about all the things that me and Henry love to make work about. So our favourite artists, our favourite politics, our activists, and two key emotions in this world that we live in is hope and anger. And my hope and anger this week, Henry, I don't know. How am I doing? Am I feeling more hopeful, more angry? I think I'm somewhere in a sorry place in between the two, where I think I'm a bit overstimulated. There's an awful lot going on. There's an awful lot of news. There's an awful lot of action taking place, and lots of it is very hopeful, and lots of it is making me really angry. And I think sometimes it's a bit much, and I'm having one of those weeks where I'm a bit like, whoa, I need to step back and just let my brain settle down for a minute. How about you? How's your hope? How's your anger?
Yeah, well, as you know, I'm someone that really is glued to the news, social media, like what's going on in the sort of zeitgeist and the waves of narratives at the moment, around just online criticism of MPs and the narrative of what that means. You know, if you're criticising someone online, it's a problem. It's this wave of like narrative and stuff. It's just stuff every day, and then it's COP26 stuff that's happening next week, and then it's the budgets come out, which is just stuff. So it's just trying to like understand.
It's all high stakes, isn't it? I mean, it has been for years, but it does feel like our adult life, the politics just the stakes get higher and higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a bit much.
It's a bit much. But I was working yesterday with our climate group here, which are a bunch of lovely teenagers, and for them, they're just like talking about climate, like they're just cracking on and doing stuff, and like they don't have that like the jadedness of like, oh dear, this is dragging me down. They just want to talk about it and look at it and study it. Which is
why it's so vital that we spend as much time as possible hanging out with young people. To keep us nice and hopeful. But what you been up to recently, Henry?
So a couple of months and months ago, I just really want to book some tickets to go to see some gigs, and love going to gigs, as many people who know me will attest. And I took a punt on a band called Nubian Twist, who I'd sort of heard a little bit on the radio, and they're sort of jazz, funk, world music. They were absolutely fantastic, but the support band absolutely blew me away. She just I never heard any of her stuff before, and she came on stage in just an amazing leopard print sort of, not a swimsuit, what am I thinking of? Like a catsuit. Leotard. And she was just so warm and charismatic and friendly, and just brought all the audience into her amazing set. And it was just her, a cello and a little percussion.
Was this someone you weren't expecting to see? It was just a warm-up act?
I knew that there was a support act on, but I hadn't gone for her. I'd gone because it was this big, fun band that headlining. And people had said, oh, she's amazing, she's great. I had a little bit of a buzz. But yeah, just so funny and chatty. And I guess as a musician, the sounds she was able to create with just her voice and her cello just blew me away. So yeah, it's I should say her name. So she is Ayana Witter-Johnson. She is a UK musician of Jamaican heritage. She's done all sorts of amazing music online, but I figured no better than to start with her absolute banging tune, and this is Rise Up.
Turn up the volume, let's hear the sound. I am the speaker, come gather round. My ears are burning, tell me the news, 'cause there's a rumor that something's about to break loose. Did you hear that? Did you feel that? Getting louder. Can you hear that? Can you feel that? Getting louder. Fires are burning deep in the night. While you are sleeping, they feed the vibes. Under the stars, they're starting to sing, and there's a rumor that nothing's gonna stop this thing. Did you hear that? Did you feel that? Getting louder. Can you hear that? Can you feel that? Getting louder. Rise up. No one can hold you down. Eyes are wide open now. Keep your head above the clouds. Rise up. Free from where you were bound. Leave the chains on the ground. Time to turn this thing around. Striving to keep you under the thumb. Blind you with tricks so that you succumb. Try to conceal that silent abuse. Now there's a feeling that something's about to break loose. Did you hear that? Did you feel that? Getting louder. Can you hear that? Can you feel that? Getting louder. Fate has decided where you belong. Voices are chanting, they're never wrong. Mountains are shaking, drums are ringing. No, nothing tonight is gonna stop this thing. Oh, did you hear that? Did you feel that? Getting louder. Can you hear that? Can you feel that? Getting louder. Rise up. No one can hold you down. Eyes are wide open now. Keep your head above the clouds. Rise up. Free from where you were bound. Leave the chains on the ground.
the power hungry, you're falling. We lose our focus, it feels like we are just crawling. Once we know ourselves, our behavior changes according. The power is within our skin and not the king. The crown is our natural redeem, never give in. More dangerous, the chains on our brain than on our limbs. So we'll never change the way we behave unless we think in a manner different than common power design is. Property over people need a paradigm shift. Creating our future right now with how we live. We know the atoms do respond to intention, so let us give all this in our bones to dethrone their old myths and aim all that we have for showing our own gifts. People, the time is now, so rise up. Once we wise up, you know that the time's up.
Rise up, no one can hold you down. Eyes are wide open now. Keep your head above the clouds. Rise up, free from where you were bound. Leave the chains on the ground. Time to turn this thing around. Rise up, your days have built this town. Go ahead and claim your crown. You create your future now. Rise up, free from where you were bound. Leave the chains on the ground. Time to turn this thing around.
That was Ayanna Witter-Johnson with her absolute banger, Rise Up, featuring, I recognise those dulcet tones of our good friend Akala. I say a good friend, he's not our friend, but we love him. We love him all the best, I think
Was
so.
it? I was concentrating too much on being a radio
yeah,
star.
and
I didn't
nailing
recognise
it.
Akala. I love Akala so much. I think he will probably make an appearance again at some point. Again, we're talking as if we know him. That's just because we're fans.
Well, Akala, if you're listening to this show, get in touch. We'd love to have you on. If you
love
drop
you.
us an email. Maybe you shouldn't be listening to this show. Now, what's coming up now?
Henry's going to do his own thing.
You put your left leg in, your left leg out. In, out, you shake it all about. You do the hokey cokey and you turn around. Henry? Henry? Henry, do you want to come? Henry? Henry? What's up with him? Oh, don't worry about him. He's doing his own thing.
Wow.
That was our special jingle for Henry Does His Own Thing.
Go on, Henry. Explain to everyone why is this our first feature called Henry Does His Own Thing?
So I am an only child, and I have worked as a solo performer.
Yeah.
And I like my own company. I like my own. I like to taste my own vibe, and so that's it, and it's great. And it's
selfish, would you say?
No, I'd say just like my own, like don't touch my toys, don't come into my room.
But
this is my space.
I had to teach Henry to offer people a cup of tea when they enter his kitchen. Put it that way.
And one day I will learn to do that. So this first feature is where I'm going to read a poem or a piece or something I've created especially for the show. So this first one is a poem I wrote over lockdown, and I think it sets up the Henryness very nicely, and it's called My Aesthetic, and it goes like this. My aesthetic is scrawny midday nerd. My aesthetic is a boy doing a 14-hour shift in Games Workshop. I've gone for the strained Warhammer intern look. The sidekick to the sidekick. I am over-ambitious with my reading lists. I am the 2 chili plant gardener, the Netflix Watch Next curator. If I was a YouTube channel, I'd have no subscribers. If I was clickbait, I would remain unclicked. If I was a film, I'd be poorly reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes. I would not be certified fresh. At the party, I am the podcast enthusiast in the kitchen. I'm the mask wearer who fears, how do I say thank you with my eyes? I am whispering, don't ask me how I am. My aesthetic is the unwashed punk band hoodie, the clipboard activist, soggy with no responses. I am the hunt saboteur, lost in the woods. I am Percy Shelley minus the drugs. My hair is a mop-top, thorn-brush, crown, duck's bum, unscissored stodge. I am the doom scroller, which is not as cool as it sounds. I am the midnight Facebook, Twitter, Instagram refresher. I am the, hi, is anyone else feeling like this? Social media deleter. I have the same vibe as characters from 90s US TV shows who get grounded. I'm the innocent until proven guilty schoolboy in detention. My flaw is a 3D printout of my student days. If allowed, I turn my camera off in Zoom meetings. I'm the reluctant volunteer, the movement ally level 10. I'm the millennial Steve McQueen. I am alarmless. I guess I'll have a shower. I'll reply to that message later. I'm the untipped waiter, the timeless Ben Gunn waiting for rescue. I'm the one the taking advantage of the scheme Telegraph article warned you about. I've metamorphosed since 2020's March. I'm not the same Henry you saw in the new year. I am changed, affected, mutated, so much more and so much lesser. My aesthetic is scrawny, midday nerd. There we go. There's my first piece.
Wow, amazing. I love it. I love it. I mean, it's a wonder why we're mates, really, isn't it, for all this time? I agree with every single statement in that poem. And, you know, here we are for some reason.
Here we are. Here we are. Get all like down and nostalgic. No, here we are doing a radio
can't
show.
go back.
Okay, so next up we have a lovely special feature. We did a interview with a lovely gentleman called Rick Blackman. So Rick has written a book about the history of music and subcultures. It's called Babylon's Burning. It came out very recently, like in the last sort of month or two, and it charts historic movements from the 1950s to the 70s to the 2000s, all about music's fight against racism, music's fight against the far right, and anything else you want to add before we go into this this pre-record that we did with Rick?
No, absolutely not. I'm really looking forward to hearing it again. It was a great chat.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us. Please tell us what led you to what led you to writing this book, and what's your sort of entry point into the anti-fascist movement?
Been a committed and active anti-racist for pretty much all my adult life, really. I was a little bit too young to be involved in Rock Against Racism in the 1970s, but I caught the tail end of it. And since then I've been involved really in any sort of instances where the far right appear and try to sort of spread their poison. So that's the sort of political side of it. I'm a musician, so those two things came together, and subcultures was really interested me as well. I came at the back end of sort of punk in the late 70s, and then it was around the mod thing in the 1980s. So all three aspects of the book I've got some sort of personal experience in. This book is a sort of adaptation of my PhD thesis that I did at Liverpool Hope University, and really what I wanted to do was to get a working class perspective on things that academics have written about. Lots of academics have written about fascism and anti-fascism, but none of them, to me, ever seem to get a grip on really what the anti-fascist movement was about, and in fact sometimes disingenuously portrayed it as being sort of superfluous to getting rid of fascism, and also misunderstanding the whole thing about subcultures and why young working class men and women get involved in these things.
How did you go about filtering, gathering these conversations, these stories? And I'm also curious, was it sometimes people wanted to stay anonymous because, fighting fascism is dangerous business sometimes?
Well, certainly some. I mean, from the first period, almost everyone that was alive at the time has died now. I was able to interview a couple of people who subsequently died, who were involved in the STARS campaign for interracial friendship in the 1950s, the first organisation. I mean, not so much now when I interviewed them like 3 or 4 years ago, but at the time there were constant death threats and arson attempts, etc., etc. So for those people, that wasn't a problem. But for people that are active around Antifa at the moment and anti-racist initiatives at the moment, obviously there was a need for some degree of looking after their identities, really, to make sure that obviously there's photos in there, but they're all historic photos, and some names people ask me to change their names as well. I mean, the threat is always there, I think, but has receded a little bit at the moment. We haven't got the English Defence League marching on the streets anymore, and the BNP aren't polling massively in elections. So that's not to say that we should ever be complacent about these things, but it's not a real threat at the moment in 2021 as it was, say, 10 years ago?
Yeah, we actually had 20. It was only, you say only 20, but it was 20 BNP members protesting outside a refugee, well, a hotel where some refugees are staying just down the road here last week, and I think a lot of people around here were very surprised, others not so surprised. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm interested in you say you were always into music and you were playing. I'm seeing a guitar in the background. I'm guessing you're a guitarist, and your life as an activist, and that those two things came hand in hand, or did they? Did one come first and then the other for yourself, but then more broadly as well for the scenes? Is it a bit of chicken and egg?
At the time that I grew up, in that period, almost everybody that I knew, white people anyway, were racist. And it was so prevalent at the time. All their brothers and sisters were racist, their parents were racist. Everybody, every white person that you came into contact echoed these views, because, it was such, the culture was such that it was just considered okay for sort of casual and hardcore racism. The television, programs like Death Do Us Part and Love Thy Neighbour, Mind Your Language, the Black and White Minstrel Show was still on, until 1979. It was a thing in the air, and the challenge to it, first of all, came from music for a lot of people, and then from that, I think people, you start investigating stuff. Then I really got into soul music, and then if you can't listen to like the late 50s R&B or 1960s soul music without coming across the civil rights movement, and then you start reading about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
Ranking Roger from The Beat in an interview saying that, he met a skinhead who was like, if it weren't for the beat, I'd still be racist.
Yeah, well, I just kind of leading on from that, really. I was also thinking about, well, what if it goes the other way? So if someone says, well, my politics are absolutely anti-fascist or anti-racist, and I agree with the principles, but the culture I find off-putting, or I go, I don't want to have to dress like that or sound like that, or I wonder if sometimes it works the other way as well, whereas someone goes, well, I don't want to be part of the subculture, but I want to be a part of the politics.
It definitely did happen as well. There were people that were involved in Rock Against Racism in the 70s, for example, who most definitely weren't punks and who weren't involved in reggae at all, because they were the two main focuses of it. There were people who, Rock Against Racism was initiated by two guys, Red Saunders and Roger Huddle, amongst other people. But they would have been in their sort of early 30s, I guess, at that time. So far too old to be punk rockers. But there were lots of people around who were into sort of like soul music, who were into other forms of music at the time that didn't fit in with sort of punk reggae subcultural sort of stereotype, if you like, of what Rock Against Racism was, but nevertheless were committed to the cause. So I don't think Rock Against Racism, like Love Music, Hate Racism now, isn't conditional upon being in a subculture. Like, if you're into drill or grime music now, that you don't have to be into that in order to be part of LMHR. But it just that's historically, when we look back, I think those are the two subcultural groups that we identify with punk, in the same way as if you look back at the 50s and identify the subculture that was involved in the violence against Black people, that would always be Teddy Boys.
If you were to sort of come back and write the next step, 1958 to say 2040, where do you think the movement, where do you think subcultures and resistance is going to go next?
If I knew that, I'd put some money in Ladbrokes. It's hard to say. All three of the organisations that I talk about in the book were all the active organisations. Fascism is a cancer, and sometimes it goes into remission, and sometimes it becomes malignant. So the 3 times it's become malignant in the last 70 years, there's been a musical response to it. There was a carnival in 1978 in Hackney in North London, a Rock Against Racism carnival, where there was 100,000 people turned up. One stage and just reggae and punk bands. In 2008, Love Music, Hate Racism had a 30-year anniversary of that carnival. But this time there were 2 stages, there were 2 tents, and there was a dance tent as well. So you can see that in that 30 years, the focus musically and subculturally had changed from just really the focus being two things to a wide variety of things. I think that's Love Music, Hate Racism. The name reflects that, because it's not rocking against racism. You know, people are using all sorts of music. What we do know is it will always be musically based, because that's one of the best tools we have to fight back against these people.
Amazing. And I think on that note, we should listen to some music, and we've asked you to choose a song that we should play. What do you want to introduce it to us and tell us a little bit about why you chose this song?
Yeah, no, well, Babylon Burning, the track by you, Roy, which is a sort of another track that bears the same name as the book. I mean, the identification of and the use of the word Babylon by the African diaspora to call the police or any sort of oppression or fight back that they're engaging against racism. So it seemed to be apt.
We've got the creator of DJ Music with us here tonight. It's the man who gave you hits like Wear You to the Ball, Wake the Town and Tell the People. I'm sure he'll tell you about the rest. Brothers and sisters, for the music maker from Kingston, Jamaica, good gracious me, it's you.
They could burn, here I come again, y'all. Big wheel keeps on turning, and the brown mirror we keep on burning. So when I tell you sit down the big wheel, and I keep on turning, and that's the dreadlocks gonna keep on earning. Wow! I said the big wheel gonna keeps on turning, and you know sister that the Babylon burning, kinda burning, burning, burning. Yeah, you know. Burning, burning, burning. I said to one light from the east, come a signal the bees. I said, you know, sister, that the Babylon burning. Big wheel keeps on turning round along the way, while the brown berry keeps on burning. Wow, keep on earning. And not the dreadlocks keep on earning. Yeah, you know. Watch the little light from the east, and see the signal from the bees. So not the dreadlocks make you keep on earning. Wow, but you know this say that the Babylon burning, so burning, burning, burning. When I tell you burning, 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 don't spread no propaganda. Take a glance over yonder. When I take a glance over yonder, all I could see the fire right on ya. So stay the big wheel, keep on turning. Some say that not the dreadlock make you keep on earning. Wow, but you know say the Babylon burning. Yeah, it's Babylon burning.
That was Babylon Burning by U-Roy, absolute legendary reggae artist, absolutely legendary reggae track. And it's the same name as the new book by Rick Blackman, Babylon's Burning, Music, Subcultures and Anti Fascism in Britain, 1958 to 2020. So please do check out that book if you enjoyed the chat. And if you enjoy Anti Fascism, which most people should do. Natalie, you were sort of reflecting on the first time we met, weren't we?
Yeah, I was going to say fascism always reminds me of you, Henry. But no, back in, I think it was 2012, it was the first time that we met in York. I'd recently moved to York and started working at York Theatre Royal, and our paths had crossed. And you pretty early on was like, oh, I'm off to fight the fascists. And I remember being like nodding and smiling politely because I didn't really know you. But at the time, as a 21-year-old, to me that was like going, oh, I'm off to go and dress up like I'm in the Second World War. And, you know, you might as well have been saying, oh, I'm going to do something from the past. Like I had been engaged politically, but the word fascism hadn't been something that I had particularly kind of processed at that time. And then I was thinking about how, you know, over the last 10 years, fascism, I think, is a word that's sort of used in our common vernacular an awful lot more, maybe because of social media and the internet. It's often flippantly used as well as, you know, used in appropriate times as well. And then we've also just seen this complete boom of genuine fascism and anti-racism that's boomed from the far right across the world. So it's just reflecting on it, thinking about it.
Just good in the past, old times.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting that I wanted to respond to Rick's interview was, you know, the far right in terms of what we understand as movements of people that are getting bodies onto the street, that are organised, that are harassing minority communities. Certainly, yes, we've not seen the EDL or there was they went under
BNP.
like football, BNP
Yeah.
Football Lads Alliance. I can't remember what they were called, but horrible branding. But they've not been mobilising in such numbers. But I think sometimes it is, yes, because they have had a fight back and they've been pushed back by groups inspired by music subcultures, but also because it has just been merged, normalized into mainstream politics. And you get that with Priti Patel saying we're going to send the boats back, and it will never be enough for these people, right? You know, they want an ethno state. If you look at her Twitter, it's constant people going, this isn't enough. But nevertheless, the policies of enough is enough, ramping up deportations, ramping up the hostile environment, and building more walls, both systematic and literal, is increasing. So why do they
and they're
need
winning
to mobilise?
elections?
Yeah.
More importantly, they're winning elections. So yeah, it's changing its face, isn't it? But that's all. I think it's changing what it looks like.
Something we were talking about earlier is the normalising of what is considered radical. This idea that actually maybe refugees are human beings, actually maybe you shouldn't start mass deportations of people, is normalising in just the conversations you have with people on a day-to-day basis. For example, this is such a minor thing, but I just was reflecting on it when someone came to the chapel to donate some stuff, and I said, oh great, we've got a refugee group that uses this space, we'll just give it to those guys when they come in once a month. And it felt so important to just not like make that into like a big deal that we're saving refugees, and also not a thing of like, not to go, oh, there's a group that we'll give it to make it clear. And it's just normal, it's there, and it's important because we did have the far right, as we said in the interview, as Patriotic Alternative mobilising locally, and their normality is, we don't want this, so we need to, it sounds radical, but to fight that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking out loud. Well, we need a bit of upbeat positivity now.
I think so.
So it's time for another special feature on the show. It's time for Nat's Banger of the Hour.
Because every single song you own is a banger.
It's time for Nat's Banger of the Hour.
Bangers.
Is it a banger?
Amazing. For anyone listening at home, I haven't heard these jingles before. Henry has made these especially and refused to play them before we went live. So thank you, Henry. They're lovely. This is my banger of the hour, and I am going to play Hope by Commoners Choir. Is that the one I chose?
It sure is.
Oh, good. The Commoners Choir, for anyone listening, are a Leeds-based choir that I'm a member of. Hooray! And they're an awesome group of people who sing passionately about politics and activisms, all those activisms. And this is one of my favourite songs to sing with them. It's called Hope.
Come on, be brave, be brave.
Hope
I feel upset. Act upon hope. I don't want to be paralysed, and I don't think any of us will be paralysed either. Act upon hope. We will be galvanised now.
Though dark clouds are gathering, there's no need to despair. A history of victories is happening everywhere. Hidden in the bluster, planted in the past. The seeds of our utopias are growing in the cracks. We need a litany, a rosary, a shout, a chant, a melody for our hope. Act upon hope. Search out the openings, build castles in the air. Fill them up with the good stuff, do the things you wouldn't dare. Test out possibilities, keep an eye out for the gaps. When things are so uncertain, you can find some room to act. We need a litany, a rosary, a shout, a chant, a melody for our hope. Act upon hope. Hope. Act upon hope. Hope is a house left standing after the hurricane. Hope is a crop we harvest after the pouring rain. Hope can be the mending after all the pain. Hope is feeling hopeless and then finding hope again. We need a litany, a rosary, a shout, a chant, a melody for our hope. Act upon hope. Hope in the dark times. Hope in the dark times. Light in the dark times. Light in the dark times. Laughter in the dark times. Laughter in the dark times. Singing 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 in the dark times. Singing.
That was Hope by Commoners Choir. It never fails to cheer Nat up. She was singing along in the studio. It was gorgeous and lovely. What an absolutely inspiring tune by Commoners Choir. So this next interview we've got for you lovely people is with Róisín McBrinn, who is the co-artistic director of Clean Break Theatre Company. So they have a couple of shows online which you can check out. One is Sweatbox, which Róisín talks about in the show, in the interview, which is a digital piece. But the show that I went to go and see a couple of weeks ago was called Typical Girls, and it was about women in a female prison who were forming a band inspired by the music of the 1970s punk band The Slits, which, as Róisín says in the interview, sort of just covers everything that represent Clean Break. I just want to give a sort of review that it was fiery and powerful, and there was just so much in it that made me want to get up and dance and take part in it. But I think there was a really interesting message at the end where the sort of liberal person had come into the prison to be like, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to make some music, and actually sort of disconnected from the women at times and didn't really understand what was necessary. And I think that was just quite an important aspect of it, that it wasn't this sudden fairy tale ending where suddenly they all create this amazing band and their whole lives become perfect and everything works out in the end. That actually it is a long, difficult, chewy road, admittedly one with some absolutely banging music along the way. So without further ado, this is our chat that we had with Róisín from Clean Break Theatre Company.
Clean Break, if you were to describe the company to someone that has never heard of the company before, how would you pitch Clean Break as an organisation and the work you do?
Clean Break is a theatre company, and at the heart of the company are our members, women who have been to prison or who are at risk of involvement in the criminal justice system. And we use theatre to work with those women to help them transform their lives and to talk to audiences in the collaboration with artists with experience of the criminal justice and without, in order to help us change lives and minds in and outside of prison.
So could you tell us about Sweatbox as a show, but then this evolution, taking it from this live setting, this really visceral, powerful place, into the world of this new digital era, and keeping the same energy and ideas behind it?
So Sweatbox, as you said, dates back to 2015 when we commissioned the brilliant Chloe Moss to write a play specifically about the journey from the courtroom to prison. And the idea was always to have it set in a prison van. So that's the Sweatbox. And the play went down brilliantly. It's the story of three women on that journey who have very different takes on it. And the audience used to experience it by entering the prison van and standing along and actually seeing it all taking place. And we toured it all over the place.
In the before times.
In the before times, yeah. And speaking of the before times, we've had a tiny reflection at Clean Break around after the before times were the time times, and now we might be in the after bit. And during the time times, there's such a narrative around how awful it was, and we, particularly when we consider the impact of the pandemic on a lot of our members, that's an indisputable fact. However, artistically, there have been some positive things for us in Clean Break, and some of them had to do with forcing us into the deep end quicker with our digital ambitions. And Sweatbox is a really good example of that. We were to tour this show in the original incarnation of it in the Sweatbox. And then when everything, the time times hit, we made a decision, and with funding from our academic partners, to make it into a film. Personally, Anna Herman directed it. I think it's a beautiful film, and I think it is a brilliant translation of the play, but also a really important story that we know the film is reaching more people than the play had been. And obviously it's a totally different medium, and it's really healthy for us to share those lives, but also for our members, the three women who are in it, Jade, Posey and Funke, for them to have experience in front of the camera is also something that we really value.
Can you tell us how Clean Break's latest show, Typical Girls, came together?
Well, when Morgan Lloyd Malcolm, who's the writer of the show, originally was commissioned, it was definitely part of the intention to get her to write something with music. And then it lay to her to sort of find the vehicle for it. She and I were back and forth with different ideas. And then one day she said to me, "What about the Slits?" And I was like, the all-female punk band from the 70s who were completely amazing and oppressed on all levels and are feminist icons for Clean Break, the feminist theatre company that tries to bring down the patriarchy through theatre. Oh, wow. Yes. Brilliant idea. And then, because she's really amazing, she took those songs and made them so intrinsically important in terms of the narratives, because the concept is really simple. It's this woman comes into prison in order to make a band. But of course, those stories, the stories within that music, so relevant to so many of the lives of the women that we work with, whether that's around oppression, whether that's around stories of addiction. There's specifically a song called Shoplifting, so that does resonate as well. It's kind of the perfect marriage, if I'm honest with you. We had planned to produce it before the pandemic, but it feels like it was made for now in so many ways. It has a very strong political heart. There's so much joy in the offer as well that we thought like, oh my God, the timing of this is really, really good. People need nights out where they're engaging with communities that they don't get a chance to engage with honestly and have a dance.
Many a time I've gone to see a piece of theatre and it's been billed as this term gig theatre, and I'm always sort of excited to see this live music, and you know, they're always amazing, great pieces of theatre, but I sometimes wonder about the term gig in theatre, and I'll be honest, I've seen some shows and I've gone, well, it's just a band on stage, it's not a gig, it's just you're using live music. I guess I wanted to ask about the gigness of the event, and also what advice would you give a director that hadn't used live music before?
It's a great provocation, that, because in kind of marketing the show and defining it, as opposed to calling it gig theatre, we went with part gig, part play. And I think that was something I was more comfortable with, because that, I hope, is the experience. You're sat in the theatre auditorium as you might be at another play at the Crucible. So we haven't actively lent into the formation of a gig. But I'm hoping that people feel like they get the experience that live music gives. It's a hybrid, is the truth. In terms of your second question regarding advice, such an important part for me. Music is an extension of words an extension of music, where it's a hard one really for me to give advice there, in that I feel like they're both so essential and have so much similarity, but also are so unique at the same time. And I think the biggest thing is in terms of directing actors. In our case, we had a group that weren't necessarily amazing musicians. Some were, but some had never picked up an instrument before the beginning of rehearsal. Journey of growing that confidence was a big part of the journey. That's been my biggest learning, about sharing that and empowering those women has been a great one.
Criticism that has been leveled against me in the work I make is that I preach the converted, and I go into very safe spaces and say things are bad, and everyone nods their head and claps and we sort of move on. I wondered, how much do you balance between the true experiences and your characters and the story of the criminal justice system, and how much do you consider how much you challenge and push and throw provocations to the audience?
I mean, it's a great question, because it's such a hard thing to control, and we know, for example, we're getting different, in inverted commas, audiences to this show than we might normally because of the music content of it. So you have to then ask, well, who are those people, and who are they to Clean Break, and who are they to the Crucible? I think slight difference with Clean Break is that we have such massive connections with the women's sector and with criminal justice charities that we at least have the ability to signpost audiences to different areas where this work is being treated more overtly in terms of political change, which we take really, really seriously. And the other part of it is to try and contextualize what you experience as an audience member with the intellectual and the philosophical questions around that. In terms of form, this show is, I don't think, didactic. It has, at the heart of the work I believe in is about soliciting empathy through offering a multifaceted version of the truth, and hopefully eliciting, I suppose, more kindness from a society that doesn't know enough about what we're doing to women in prison and how little support they get after prison, in my opinion, and B, could do with doing better with both of those things.
There a song that you would like us to play on East Leeds FM?
I mean, it's got to be Typical Girls.
That was the absolutely legendary Typical Girls by The Slits. Now, there are some people that would cry sacrilege that I'm fading that out a little bit early, but that is because we're coming up to the end of the show. We've got one last feature for you folks, and it is, of course, Nat's Provocation Station.
The chat train is pulling into Nat's Provocation Station.
I love these jingles, Henry. They're brilliant. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this is my provocation station. I get to close the show with just whatever I've been thinking about, really. I think I mentioned at the top that I'm doing a PhD at the Institute of Social Justice. So I'm often thinking some big old thoughts about art and activism and politics, and I'm going to try and articulate a few of them for you now. I think this will maybe sum up a few of the moral dilemmas I think that we've been touching upon in the world of art and activists and the likes of us. So yeah, this is where I've been at this week. When it comes to the climate justice movement, do you ever get the feeling that we're in a film? Like The Truman Show, apart from I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be the unsuspecting Jim Carrey character or one of those actors. With the COP26 smouldering on the horizon like Mount Doom, we know what this story entails. The protesters will polish off their wittiest placards and most satirical costumes. They will chant and wail and pray that this time the message will get through. The suits will shake hands and dutifully receive their 40 lashings from Greta for their sins. They will clap, perhaps shed a tear, and then make promises that they have no intention of keeping. Do I sound cynical? Yeah, it happens a bit more often these days. I must be getting older. And it suits me to be a bit more optimistic. So when I catch myself getting lost in this epic, doom-filled, completely overwhelming movie, I ground myself and get some dirt under my fingernails. Literally. For the last 12 months, I've been lucky enough to be a part of Climate Action Seacroft, a newly formed resident group that have come together to connect around environmental and climate-based issues and action that we can take in our local area. The priorities of the group are to focus on creating a community allotment, growing our own food and forest garden, connecting with schools and young people and each other. It's about relationship building and appreciation for nature and community togetherness. Will Climate Action Seacroft stop the seas from rising? No. It will, however, transform some people's lives. And unlike many of the environmental activist groups I've been a part of in my adult life, there's not a dreadlock or a mohawk or even much of a sniff of alternative culture. Just the everyday embodied repetitions and practices of care that make modest and purposeful contributions to progressive and social environmental goals. When I feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of the climate crisis, I return to this quiet form of activism, putting my megaphone and poster pate under the stairs and embracing small practical changes that can develop into long-lasting structural change. At the beginning of his book, Environmental Justice, The Key Issues, Brendan Coulsat writes, "If histories are stories, they must be continuously told, added to and retold. Dear reader, I hope you are and may become part of the telling." So in The Truman Show, even the extras do influence the main narrative. I think it's okay, necessary even, to step back and reflect upon your own role within the climate crisis blockbuster.
Oh, very good little provocation there from Natalie Quatermass. Clap, clap, clap,
what do you think, Hennes?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's about, we were talking before about that normalisation, like defeating the normal narrative of racism that, you know, refugees, people from around the world that welcome here, with our narrative, with a much more hopeful one. And the same with the climate crisis is this, we need to have this narrative that it's normal to care and it's normal to want to take action. But I guess it's that entry level, isn't it? There's been so much in the news about Insulate Britain and their tactics and people going, oh, it hurts the cause. And, you know, those discussions can go back and forth. But, you know, I've gone to activist spaces where I felt left out, and I get all the in-jokes and references.
Yeah, I think the subcultures, it's like I said to Rick in his interview, I feel like they can often work in the negative. And it makes sense. It makes sense that people need tribes and to come together and to have a sense of togetherness, so you form a subculture. So you look a certain way, or you act a certain way, you listen to a similar kind of music. But I'm also just experiencing in my practice right now in Seacroft, in the place where I live, that cultural baggage can often be a negative thing and turn a lot of people off. And a lot of people who still have the intention to be like care about the environment or care about their local community and want everyone to have enough food to eat and want people to be able to heat their own homes. I mean, these are the issues that are affecting our local community. And then environmental issues. So yeah, we're starting with a community allotment, but that can be a quietly radical act, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love, to say radical ideas, and I do think we need radical ideas, but I guess it's like taking them from this ether of like, the air of going up. Like, we'd never be able to change the culture of how we use energy, for example, but the culture change that we don't burn as much coal. I think it's about 40% of Britain's energy comes from renewables now, which is probably something that was totally unheard of. We had Alex Sobel on the Red Kite show on Friday, and he said when he came to Parliament in 2017 as an MP for the first time, there was still climate deniers that said, climate change isn't a thing. The government were in a coalition with the DUP, who were just like, we don't believe that it's a thing. Now, I mean, you could argue it's dangerous because they sort of brush it under the carpet, but
and greenwashing.
But in a way, at least it's this conversation topic that Johnson and Biden put on the table and go, this is what we're doing. It's not enough. We know this. Dear listeners, you probably know this. It's not enough, and we hope that radical things need to come out of COP. But at least it's putting that on the table and putting those conversations in people's minds, so they go along to that community garden, and it helps not just climate but well-being. It helps community action. It helps bring people together.
Absolutely. And I'm interested in that mixture where the top down climate change needs to happen at the top and come down. There's no doubt about that. There's billionaires and policymakers at the top that have the power in this case, as well as that grassroots community based change, and then kind of institutional stuff in the middle that can happen at council level. I'll tell you more about that in another show, I think.
And going back to Clean Break, going back to Rick's book, subcultures, as much as we've have acknowledged that sometimes they can be a little bit cliquey, at the end of the day, subcultures, music, art create that normality, that it's part of our DNA. The fact that if you're listening to soul music,
a part of the history, like that. Like I said, it's becoming a part of the story and weaving a history that we have in this culture. I mean, imagine Henry Raby without punk patches. What would that even look like?
It would look like a loser, but I'm not a loser. I'm a legend. And you're a legend. And listeners, Vandals out there, you are legends.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
So we've come to the end of our first show. Please come check us back again, third Tuesday of every month on East Leeds FM. It's been a delight to be here. I'm so glad the broadcasting worker programmed this show. He must be a legend as well.
And also, just a quick reminder that you can follow us on all the usual social media platforms at Vandal Factory Theatre. I love you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. This is another anti-fascist tune. It is The Men They Couldn't Hang with the Ghosts of Cable Street. Hope you enjoy.
England 1936, the grip of a Sabbath day. In London town, the only sound is a whisper in an alleyway. Men put on their gloves and boots, have a smoke before they go. From the west there is a warning of a wind about to blow. Like seas are marching to the east, sees Mosey with his men, dressed in the clothes of deepest black, like a gathering herd is a British Union. Its flag is black and red. A flag that casts a shadow in Berlin and in Madrid. So listen to the sound of marching feet and the voices of the ghosts of chivalry. Vest and stone, battles and a gun. With courage we shall beat those black shirts down. So mile they come on down to a place called Cable Street. Another man are waiting there. Preparations are complete. Most the jump so close they now can see his outstretched arm. A hand raised up that way never took the future in his palm. So listen to the sound of marching feet and the voices of the ghosts of Cable Street. Vest and stones, battens and a gun. With courage we shall beat those black shirts down. Battle broke, the vests and the batters fell. Barricades past the sound of the wounded yell. Jack Spot ran through with a chilling melee. Brought down a crushing blow. So we learn from history, generations have divided. And those who crave for mastery must be faced down on sight. And if that means by words, by fists, by stones, or by the gun, remember those who stood up for their daughters and their sons. So listen to the sound of marching feet and the voices of the ghosts of Cable Street. Vest and stones, battens and a gun. With courage we shall beat those black shirts. Listen to the sound of marching feet and the voices of the ghosts of Cable Street. Vest, stones, battens and a gun. With courage we shall beat those black shirts down. Sing it, yo! Sure you know your rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.